Chris L. Stronfat Walker is the secondary antagonist in OUTLAST and a minor antagonist in OUTLAST. Whistleblower. He is a recurring and very large variant that pursues Miles Upshur relentlessly, and who is considerably larger and stronger than any other inmate. A document states that Walker's predominant fixation is a manic exaggeration of military security protocol. He claims the flesh ripped from his forehead allows for a truer vision, much like Tuatara and their third eye. The removal of his nose and lips was a result of self-mutilation due to extreme anxiety. He is responsible for the deaths of various people inside the asylum, employees and patients alike, in an attempt to contain the Walrider, which Father Martin is trying to set loose upon the world. A note reveals that before being admitted into Mount Massive Asylum, Walker was ex-military police, as well as having toured Afghanistan several times. Prior to being incarcerated at Mount Massive, Walker's career started off as a military policeman in the United States Army and was an Iraq War veteran. After his return from Afghanistan, he and other war veterans were committed to Spindletop Psychotherapy Clinic in Haddon, Texas due to their recently developed post-traumatic stress disorder. They were treated with dream therapy, guided by hypnosis, to subconsciously release their trauma. Eventually, Walker became a Murkoff employee and worked as a surveillance officer at Spindletop to survey the therapy sessions. Walker is seen to have a rather plain, childlike mind, conversing with simple expressions and incomplete sentences. Due to his stature and inhuman strength, he was nicknamed Stronfat by his colleagues, a name which he despised. Chief Psychotherapist Drive Claymore stated he was including Arabic culture in his therapy to show his soldiers that Christian and Islamic myths originate from the same place in order to overcome their traumas. However, this method seems to have worked their psyche, leaving delusions of the Apkallu demigods in their heads. Right before they were killed, all of the victims were seen referring to the Apkallu, which might have been a trigger for Walker to set up his murders. At some point, Walker's psyche broke, leading him to kill 3 inmates, being John Dowers, Martin Belmont, and Priscilla Clark, all of which were veterans. The discovered bodies were brutally torn apart with each victim missing their head, leading people to assume that the killer kept them as trophies. Walker is shown to be well aware of his actions, although his main reason behind the killings remains uncertain. Two Murkoff agents named Pauline Glick and Paul Marion investigated the murders without involving the police. Walker deceits and misleads them in their investigation, willingly cooperating and commenting positively about the victims. Eventually, they discovered that Walker was behind the killings when a 4th victim, Dr. Claymore, had been found in the therapy room. Realizing that this should have been recorded on the security monitors, they visited Walker's control room. However, the surveillance equipment was completely destroyed, and since only 2 people had access to the surveillance room, including Claymore and Walker, they figured that Chris was the one responsible. They headed to Chris' residence, but he was not home. They found 4 cooler boxes, 3 of which contained the heads of Walker's previous victims. When they discovered that one of the boxes was empty, they realized that he was bound to arrive home soon, and so they waited for him. Meanwhile, they searched his house and found his childhood toy, a stuffed toad pig. Shortly afterward, Walker arrived home with the head of his last victim. The officers immediately drew their guns and ordered him to stand down. However, seeing the investigators holding his stuffed animal, he lashed out at them. He threw Pauline to the ground and grabbed Paul by the throat. Pauline shot him several times in the face, scarring him horribly. In response, Walker dropped Paul and instead attacked Pauline, throwing her through a window. Before Chris could kill her, Paul grabbed his gun and shot Chris several times, only for Chris to knock the gun out of his hand and throw him to the ground. As he approached Paul, Pauline got in her car and drove at Chris, the impact throwing him against a rock and knocking him unconscious. Afterwards, Walker was apprehended by the 2 agents, as he was a Murkoff employee. The killings were blamed on another patient, Omar Abdul Malik, who received a life sentence in prison. Walker, however, was not surrendered to the police, but was instead committed to Mount Massive Asylum for experimentation. 2 months later, Pauline was called to the asylum where she met Jeremy Blair in the underground lab. Blair showed her Walker, who was not recognizable as a human anymore and had been turned into a monster. Chris is a very large and burly man who possesses superhuman strength and durability. He is able to easily pick up a fully grown man with one hand and tear off someone's head from their body. During the asylum's riots, Walker even managed to take on a dozen armed officers without sustaining any major injuries. He can bash down doors, barehanded, and break through reinforced glass. During his encounter with the Pauls, Chris displayed high pain tolerance, withstanding multiple gunshots to his torso and jaw, as well as being hit by Pauline's car. Walker is also surprisingly athletic for his size, running almost as fast as Miles and being able to leap over large obstacles with ease. Although his psyche has been severely damaged, he holds a certain level of intelligence, being somewhat aware of Mount Massive's ongoing situation and Murkoff's illegal experiments. Chris is able to track down Upshur through the entire asylum, scouring nearby rooms and checking potential hiding spots, such as lockers and deads. He is well accustomed to the darkness, easily traversing Mount Massive's poorly lit areas and often waits motionless while listening out for approaching targets. He also seems to be capable of noticing his prey's presence by picking up their scent. He keeps trophies of his victims, as many severed heads are seen lined up on bookshelves in the administration block's library.